The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed are the guest's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of AIHA. AIHA does not endorse any guest or the entity that they represent. On this episode of Healthier Workplaces, Trailblazing Women in OEHS, we were joined by Jennifer Holliday and Nancy Wilk live from AIHA Connect 2024. Stay with us. PSX 2024 is coming to Denver, Colorado on October 15th through 17th, 2024. Discover new networking opportunities. Visit exhibitions to exchange innovative ideas. Learn best practices from product stewardship professionals. Discover solutions for the issues of tomorrow. PSX 2024.
So we're back with another episode from AIHA Connect 2024 in Columbus, Ohio. I'm Bob Krell, host of this show and founder and publisher at Healthy Indoors Media. Thanks for joining us for actually a topic that I think will be very interesting. We're talking about trailblazing women in OEHS. And joining us today are Nancy Wilk and Jennifer Holliday. Thanks so very much for being on the show and taking time out of your event here to join us.
Well, thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're super excited to be here.
So can you share with us a little bit of an overview on how, both of your career journeys got you into the field of occupational health and safety?
Sure. Thanks for the question. So I did a undergraduate degree in health sciences and had started off in biochemistry. And after 3 years of working in lab, decided I didn't want to work in a lab for the rest of my life, much to the chagrin of my parents. And so broadened out into a more general health degree and worked in health admin for a little while after I graduated. And it was actually typing someone's paper. So it was back in the days where we had no computer. It was electric typewriter, and I used to make a little money typing students' paper. So it was my brother-in-law's paper. He was in an occupational hygiene master's program at the University of Toronto in Ontario, where I was from. And I thought, man, I got a really good background for this. So that's how I learned about occupational hygiene and pursued it. So did a master's there. And then upon graduating, I was, as an early career professional, actually became an enforcement officer within the first year of my graduation. So worked for the province of Ontario, carried a badge, had authority under legislation to go into a workplace, but I was very young. And so some of the topics we're going to get into today, it brings me back to those experiences and those memories. And so spent my first 10 years in enforcement in the province, and then decided I wanted to try my hand at private industry. And I got all kinds of questions like, why would you ever want to leave the government? But anyways, I did and went into consulting and absolutely hated it. It was very competitive.
You hated it.
You stay, your clients are over there, mine are over here. And it was a situation that I just really didn't like it. So from there, did risk management at a university. So I was a risk management director for McMaster University, 22,000 students, 8,000 staff, 5 unions, and even had a nuclear reactor. So universities are little environments like cities unto themselves. So had a lot of great exposure through that job, but really became interested in finding something else because I had a fabulous team, but I would get many calls in the middle of the night. The side of the chemistry building just blew off and we need you to come in, and the fire department's here, but they won't clear the building till you come in and do that. And so risk tolerance and risk perception, it was a real problem at that time in the academic sector. And I think there's still some pressures there, but left there and actually went back to consulting to other firms and really enjoyed that. And that's where I've spent the majority of my career. My focus is on the mining sector. And throw in there as well, I was a global VP for health, safety, security, environment for a global ground engineering environmental firm for 6 years. So that's where it brings me to today. That's
You've done a few things.
Yeah, yeah, and it's been great. Lots of great opportunities.
Excellent. Jennifer, tell us about your past.
Well, I started out the career consulting, actually. I actually can say I had a little bit of an opposite experience. I actually did enjoy consulting. I loved coming fresh out of school and being able to go to so many different facilities from manufacturing, refining, power generation, and really just seeing really how it's made. How do we get these end products that we all use every day? I thought that was really interesting in being able to collaborate on projects and really learn from these other people who have been in the field for much longer than I. After nearly 8 years, I decided to take the next step in my journey and move towards like more of an internal position. I'm with 3M now, and I'm loving being able to have that perspective and have a direct impact on changes within a company versus kind of like that little bit of an outsider perspective on consulting. You can't always have that opportunity to really make a direct change internally. So I love having that chance.
So, what are some of the challenges that both of you faced? As a woman in a career that's pretty much male dominated, right?
Mhm.
OEHS has been traditionally, not saying it is now, and fortunately, it is starting to evolve a bit. But it's been a male dominated industry, and that obviously had to be difficult at times.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So for me, when I came into the workforce in the late 80s, in this profession, it was that situation where I was the only woman in the room, and again, I was an early career professional, so um, really, not always, but there were times when I would just my confidence would waver a little bit, and I'd wonder, do I have authority to be here? And given the role that I'd been entrusted with.
I think a lot of the challenges that I have had thus far in the career have been relating to communication and collaboration. Um, being whether you're in the consultant role or not, being the subject matter expert and that you were hired into this position to answer those questions and to be that point of contact. But when you're routinely questioned, like, are you sure? Are you sure? Like, yeah, I'm sure. Like, that's why I'm here. Um, Either being talked over, routinely questions, it really makes you question, like, am I making the right decision? Am I doing the right thing? You kind of get that imposter syndrome going on. I don't want to you really question, like, am I the right person for the job? Am I doing the right thing? Am I making the right choice for these people? And I have to take a step back and really just like, yes, I'm doing the right thing, and reevaluate what's the overall group goal and try to bring everybody else's values in line with why I'm trying to do the things I'm trying to do.
I could just add another comment there
Yeah.
because you made me think about something. So, like one of the things we've learned is where there's a lack of diversity in a workplace, people don't feel like they belong, right? So you were
Absolutely.
just saying that, and you know, research goes further than that today to say that where workers feel like they don't belong, it starts to impact their mental health and their physical health. So
Mhm.
it's a really important question, and it's really something that we can do a lot to support each other and support people that are in those situations now.
Mhm. DE&I has become such a hot topic lately, and it's something that like we may hear a lot about, but it's something we don't need to stop talking about. It's something that we need to continue having those conversations and continue growing it. It's not just men and women, it's really for all the different communities, and it's not an us versus them either. It's conversations where, men and women alike, we can talk to each other, other races, other backgrounds. It's literally just a difference within a room. So being able to have those different perspectives at the table and come up with a plan to meet a goal, like it literally bringing everybody together. And that's the important thing. And I've often had trouble with having that diversity in a room. So trying to make that happen is super key.
I'd like each of you to share a specific story about, an experience, that highlights the importance that what you feel is the importance of women in positions within the field of OEHS. And I think that's really it's going to be important to hear that perspective.
So we've already spoken to diversity and inclusion, right? And I think that women in any sector and level, they bring different attributes to a workplace. And we know that as you increase diversity, you get better performing teams and people work safer. Actually, they're more innovative, and so women what we bring to OEHS are different perspectives, and certainly as leaders, we lead differently. And because of our experience, for some of us, I think that there's an understanding, perhaps, for those people that we might consider to be vulnerable workers, and the risks that they face.
I think there's a great opportunity for women in leadership to be able to help build and grow teams to look not just at individuals' values, but also build the empathy within an organization, and to not just look out for what my values are, what can you get out of it, what can I get out of it, but why does it matter? Why do I care about what's going on? Why should you care about what I'm trying to do? And really put feeling into it. And it's like, I've gotten a feedback a lot that you're too emotional. And I'm like, I'm not trying to be emotional. I care. I genuinely care. And that's the
Yeah.
biggest thing. Like, this is why you need to care too.
Yeah,
It's nothing wrong with
and that's
caring.
unfair to say that. It's like, yeah, you actually should have emotion, and you should care about what you're up to.
Yeah. And it's
Why
like,
are you there? Yeah.
like, why don't you care? Why aren't you emotional? It's okay to be emotional.
I get that.
I'd also like to speak to that question from the opportunities perspective. So when I talk to other women about career opportunities, I think that our careers in OEHS are very well suited for women.
Mhm.
It's not labor intensive. You can make a very good salary. You can hold all kinds of positions, and it's been exciting for me throughout my career. Like, hazards are always changing, different people, different workplaces. So it's an exciting, dynamic career choice.
Absolutely. You get to see so many different things, but you have the opportunity to work with so many people and build one-on-one relationships with employees, but then also collaborate with leadership and build yourself up in an organization. And eventually, you can also help build each other up with you and help grow another female or male or whomever. You can build that young career professional up. And that's the best part about being in this field. You're not just doing one thing, you're building up the entire organization.
Excellent.
I think also, if you're if you're interested in a career like that's health related, you really want to advocate for people and help people, but you don't want to be on call working nights all the time like a physician, right? It's
Yep,
a great choice.
absolutely.
So have either of you experienced imposter syndrome? And if so, how did you navigate that?
I'd say I got a good one.
Yeah.
I
Okay, go
didn't want
for
to
it.
talk over you. I heard
No, that's good.
um yeah, I've had a lot of conversations where it has, I think we touched on it a little bit before, where it was a lot of questioning of like, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure? I mean, I'm not in the room with every conversation with my male peers, but I don't hear the are you sure's with my male peers. I've had to second guess myself a lot, and I have to try every day to not do that. Um, but I've gotten unfortunately, into some negative environments where it's turned into an argument about a judgment call that I may make, and it's for the betterment of the employee. It may make somebody else's life a little bit harder because they have to change their plan slightly, or maybe something has to get done just a little bit later or with a little extra effort from you, but is it the safer route to go? Or maybe does it have to do with compliance, or just here's the reasons why? And sometimes it's easy black and white, and sometimes it's in the gray. We like, at least I do like to operate in the gray sometimes. So we really just have to try to make things work the best we can for the whole group. But the biggest struggle I've ever had was having to be questioned all the time. And that's just, it gets hard after a while. It's like, what do you do? So you just try to build yourself up with it, but really lay out, here's the why. Like, are you sure? Yes. And here's why. And I've had to print out, I feel like I've killed a forest of trees. Like, here's the documentation. I'm not even going to give you the website here. I've highlighted it. I've bookmarked it. Here you go. Here's the why.
So I think I struggled with it the first 10 years of my career, what I was referencing earlier about being an enforcement officer. And think of a really specific example. I used to have to go out when there was a work refusal that could not be resolved in the workplace by the supervisor and the worker and the Joint Health and Safety Committee or union, whatever was applicable to the situation. So I remember going to a foundry, and the owner of the foundry, like I was early career professional, well, he was probably close to retirement, and it was his foundry, and he'd built his business, and you know, I hadn't been into many foundries by then, and where I was, the office I was practiced or that I was based out of was in Hamilton, Ontario, and that's kind of like Pittsburgh equivalent, steel town kind of thing. So um, he spoke to me throughout the investigation of the work refusal in a very gruff voice, very loud, like he was really trying to intimidate me. At one point, he asked me, like where was my background to make this decision, and so it was really tough, and and so in those situations, what I learned to do is I had to separate the fact from the feelings.
Mhm.
Right? He was making me feel really awkward.
That's
but
hard though, right?
it is, absolutely is,
Absolutely.
right? But you have to discipline yourself to do it, right? And so and the more that I think you do it, it's like when you lack confidence and you don't feel comfortable speaking. The more that you use your voice and you speak, you'll find it gets easier, right? So separating the fact from feeling. And then one of the other inspectors that I worked with that was very kind, he suggested to me, he said, you need to make a why I am great file. And in those days, it was literally a file folder in my filing cabinet. And if I ever got any positive feedback, it would go into that folder. And he suggested that, yeah, the purpose of that is, if you're not feeling like you belong here, or you're just kind of feeling down on yourself and questioning all of that, just pull it out and read some of that stuff. And I still have that folder to this day. So I tell people to do that.
I love that so much. I recently started doing the very same thing. I went out and got a fancy folder. Like it's all glittery, sparkly, whatever makes your heart happy. I decided to get something that just brightened up your office, like just whatever makes you happy. I got that. Any like even if it's just a post-it note that says thank you, I put it in there. If it's a hey, great job, like anything that's remotely showing like, hey, you did something great. If I'm just feeling crummy, like I'm not doing a good job,
Yeah.
like so, at least one person, if like it doesn't have to be a management person, if an operator just says thank you, I'm putting that in that folder, man, and just like that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's for the operator, not that it's not for the company. Don't get me wrong here, but if I can make the difference with the employee, that's why I do what I do, is for those people.
Yeah, I mean, I think empathy is like a major part of this industry and in what we all do,
Absolutely.
right? If it isn't, maybe you should reconsider your career choice.
No doubt.
I think another piece of advice, struggling with the imposter syndrome is try and surround yourself with people that are going to build you up, right? And even like when I mentor and coach people, when I first sort of get into that relationship with them, I explain my focus has always been life is all about relationships, the rest is detail. So if you focus on those relationships, invest in them, then when you need help or you need support in resolving something, you'll have the people around you. So,
Yep.
if you're struggling with imposter syndrome, talk to those people, like just, use your network.
Definitely. And if you are in a situation where you don't have somebody who's physically there with you, like in your building, on your plant, wherever you're at, if there's no one there with you, find somebody still within your organization that maybe you can have that video call, have that phone call, or even if they're outside of your organization, find somebody you can connect with, that you can have that relationship with, have those deep conversations. And if nothing else, join AIHA's mentorship program. Like that's a really great way also to find a mentor if you really are struggling and need somebody, or dabble in both. There's nothing wrong with having a growing network of support.
Have both of you found strategies that are effective, for building confidence and assertiveness? Because I mean, not to just make that assumption that women need to do that more, because I think everybody does. Young professionals too coming up. short white men do too. Trust me. It's like it's a when I was young, especially. Now I'm past that point.
I think preparation for everybody is key, right? So even if you don't feel confident, preparing well, that's key with whatever you've got to do. If you struggle with confidence, the preparation will definitely help. Makes it a lot easier than having to wing it, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
If you prepare, I'm sorry,
no, go
I
ahead.
don't want to cut you.
It's fine.
If you preparing for a project, whether it's a presentation or project, or even if you're nervous about being that person with boots on the ground of, oh my gosh, I have to go hang pumps on people and I don't like talking to people. Practice that conversation before going out on the floor, or even approach the supervisor and, hey, I really would like your support with this. And even just having them present or aware that you're going to be there. So like if there's an issue, you can have that backup support. That's honestly what I started doing, is having some key players at least in your corner. And then I hate to be that person that just live the Nike commercial and do it, but just do it. Like, take the seat at the table. Like, if you don't promote yourself, no one else will. Just do it. Take the seat at the table before someone else does.
But so as women, how do you deal with challenging personalities, or people that are overly dominant, that in your professional workplace? I mean, have you? I'm assuming you've probably experienced negativity sometimes in relation to the if you show assertiveness. It just seems like there's it's like it's embraced in men, like you want assertive men, but assertive woman, right? It's not. There's this totally reverse stigma about that, right?
So for me, I've learned to push back. Like that's my, if
That's your button.
yeah, well, but in a way that, like, let's explore it. Like, if I'm feeling the pressure, and I think we talked about this before. I had a supervisor early in my career. He was very accomplished CIH, an engineer, had studied a lot about agglomeration and particles, and most people on my team were really afraid of him. For other reasons, like he just was gruff around the edges and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I made it a point to, I'd bring him technical questions, and if he was pushing us, I'd kind of push back. And I mean, I hated when he'd say, well, go read that text over there and then come back and ask me. But I got less fearful of the guy, and it actually developed into a really good relationship for our whole team. I grew up in a family with 4 older brothers, so and in a military base, so lots of
Oh, okay.
testosterone.
yeah, just a little.
So the pushing back, I think, and when I say that, I don't mean in an aggressive sense, but instead of leaning back, lean in.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I don't know where this comes from, but that saying about success, a big part of it's showing up, right?
Yep.
To what
No,
you
absolutely.
said, just be there at the table. Know your limitations. It's okay to say that I need to check something, especially, well, at any point in our career, right? It we aren't expected to know everything, but we should have an intuitive knowledge of where to go to get the information.
Mm-hmm.
So that's okay. So recognize that, and again, I would say remind yourself of what's brought you there. Like, you've
Mm-hmm.
studied, you've earned this, you've been given this position. Just focus on those positive things.
Yeah. I went through a really interesting exercise with different people at a job site, where we were trying to build our team and understand what positive attributes everybody had, right? So with sticky notes, we went around and, like, we wrote a word on it, and collaborative, stuck it on you, like team player, really, like, just all these different words. Aggressive was put in front of me,
Uh-oh.
but they put it down, and it was the manner in which it was put down, and they looked at me just
Waiting for the reaction.
and just kind of like slunked away. So I'm like, well, that was not meant in a positive manner. And I don't dislike the word aggressive. I think it's meant differently for men and women, unfortunately. For men to be assertive or aggressive, and just, to me at least, has been like, you're a go-getter, they go get something done. And for women to be assertive or aggressive, it's like, You know,
No, I mean, you're,
like
you're
we
100%
we
right.
haven't really. And I was like, man, why is that? And
There's a ridiculous double standard. It's very, the hypocrisy is.
I mean, I've tried to let that roll off my shoulder, and it's like that they're going to use whatever verbiage they want to be, but if it's assertive for me to take that seat at the table and to have those conversations and being like, whoa, okay, coming at me with a lot of energy, you're upset about something, I totally get it. Let's talk about that. Like, what are we upset about? Okay, here's what I know about it. Did I miss any details? What are we upset about? I try to have that conversation and get their understanding so we can make a full loop. Oftentimes they don't quite have all the details. So or maybe I don't. Like, it goes both ways. Sure. So I make sure that everybody involved really does understand before making assumptions and potentially escalating a situation. So definitely make sure all parties are on the same page if someone comes at you in a negative manner. But just as you mentioned, knowing your own limitations and be like, okay, we need to hit the pause button on this, or you know what, I don't I think I know the answer, but let me double check myself. Or hey, I don't if you honestly don't know, just say I don't know, but I will find you an answer. Hit me up tomorrow. I got you. Be honest about it.
Can you share an experience, perhaps, where you were you felt supported by a mentor or somebody in like a positive role model situation in your career, and how that mentorship may have helped you uh, and impacted positively your professional journey?
I can, sure. So, Gyan Rajans, who some people in AIHA will know, he was he's one of the, I think, original authors of the ACGIH Industrial Ventilation Manual that we use. So he's originally from India, but also lives in Canada, and he was working for the Ontario Ministry of Labour when I was an employee there, and very much looked up to him. He was the provincial occupational hygiene advisor to our minister, who's like our elected official. And so later in my career, less than 10 years ago, he nominated me for the ACGIH board. And I had served on other boards, like a local provincial board, and then some not-for-profits. And so I actually got elected to the board, and it was great, and I enjoyed it very much. And I grew up in a home where volunteerism was a big deal. My mom, was a mother to 5 kids, and in the late 60s, she was given a medal from the Governor General of Canada for her volunteer activities with the St. John's Ambulance. So that was pretty cool. So being a volunteer was good. So all that to say, a big part of my career that I have enjoyed is working with the volunteer organizations, and I volunteer in AIHA, and it's this kind of stuff, this network, which I love, where you really get to know people. There's common interests. You're kind of all pushing in the same direction. It's not a competitive place, and it's really been lovely. And I think the networks and the opportunities have been wonderful. So now I serve on the International Occupational Hygiene Association board on behalf of ACGIH, and I'm the president-elect for them right now. So that's brought a whole new kind of fun opportunity, and working with a lot of wonderful people too. So
Nice.
I can echo that entirely. I love only I say recently, Women in IH has been around for a little while now, but we really didn't have a group that really just took a look at either women's issues or just gave us an open space to talk to one another and just bring everyone together. And the fact that we do invite men to participate as well, it's not exclusive by any means, but that we can all come together, whether it's with issues or highlighting the positives, and that we can all grow and learn together. And it's from all the different disciplines of OEHS and different facilities. And how are you doing this? How are you doing that? How I am really struggling in my workspace. It's a whole different level of mentorship, and like, how can you help me overcome this? And what resources do you have? Am I missing something? And it's an amazing space that we've all been able to come together, that AIHA has allowed us to make this group. I can't say enough about how much this organization has impacted women.
And from what I've seen, I've only been really involved with the organization directly for a few years now, producing the show and everything. And yeah, more than any other organization I've ever worked with, by far, it seems more inclusive and more inclined to try to improve, DEI. I've, I A lot of other organizations talk about it, and it's total just window service. They're
Yeah.
not doing it at all.
I just watched another presentation about DEI. It would be like, I think AIHA has put out so much information out there about DEI, and it's such a hot topic. But if we, and it's not that we're not doing a good job, if there's a way to bridge the gap, I think, between individual businesses when I'm talking about organizations versus AIHA as a whole, like, we're doing an awesome job and here's why it's important. But here's why companies, this is why you should do it too, and get that out there.
So can I plug a presentation I'm doing on D&I?
Sure.
So tomorrow, I'm co-presenting with one of my colleagues, who's a early career professional, on supporting women in mining, and it's on diversity and inclusion, reproductive hazards, and birth outcomes. And the mining sector, is really focused on increasing the representation of women in their workforce, and they really have to accomplish what needs to get done. And then the challenge becomes with all of the issues around providing a safe, inclusive environment for women in mines. There's a real dearth of information on research on women for occupational hazards and regulations and guidance, because our research is generally based on quote unquote reference man, which is 25 to 30 years old, 70 kilos, and Caucasian. And so it gets even more complicated when we start to look at reproductive hazards and all these other issues. So yeah, so that's tomorrow.
So what initiatives or practices have both of you implemented or observed, to create a safe, inclusive work environment for women in OEHS? I mean, obviously, we're talking about the organization AIHA's efforts on that, but in your own careers and professions, what have you seen?
So I mentor people, not just women, but women are the topic right now. So so I mentor women within my organization, but also outside the organization. So there's a professor at the University of Minnesota who's asked me to be a mentor this past year for her. Other people that have been in the organization that I've worked in, and they've left and so gone into other sectors. And so we have calls set up, and then women throughout the organization that I work for currently. And a couple things that I try to do that are related to this is be generous with my time and generous with my knowledge, because that all helps support people if they're struggling with the things that we've just kind of talked about and explored.
And I love that so much. Yeah, I know we've only recently been able to meet in person. Like yeah. we've exchanged emails, and yeah. We've finally been able to meet in person. And I love how much our relationship has grown. And then I'm at that point in my career where I'm roughly 10 years in. Yeah. So it's like, I'm not necessarily new, but I'm not like a fellow 15 plus years in the organization. So I'm kind of in that middle ground where like, what can I do to impact everybody? And I love that I was able to get involved in the organization, but individually in my workplace, what can I do? And we have established women's groups as well, and I try to be involved there. But even just in a meeting, like, what impact can you make? Like, just if you see a coworker that's being talked over, say, hey, what was the point you were trying to make? And that's actually a really great point, and that ties in with this thing we're working on. And try to pull them in, and if you see somebody struggling, bring them up and highlight, like, we collaborated on this together and they did a really great job on that. And I'm not going to speak for all women. I haven't been the best at it in my past, and I've been trying to really focus hard on trying to be better at it. But I've also been on the receiving end where we try to make ourselves look good and we don't try to build everybody up. And I've been trying really hard to, bring us all together. If we build each other up, everybody wins,
Sure.
No one loses in that.
So what do you see, how do you see the role of women evolving in OEHS, and as far as leadership and influence goes?
I think it's growing. Like, I think we have more of a presence. And I think that the more active I've become in the organization, I've seen more of a presence. There's still definitely a difference between um, men and women in the workforce. And if you look at management positions, even if you were to just take a look at some basic statistics out there from like just business studies or whatever, like there's a significant difference between men and women that are in OEHS management positions, organizational CEO positions, things like that. But I think it's improving, but there's still a huge gap, and we're not going to close that gap, I don't think, in our lifetimes. But we're we're getting
Well, at
there.
least we're maybe going in the right direction.
We're going in the
You
right
know, that-
direction. I
which is
really do
that's-
think so. And
that's
like
a
every little thing
start.
that we can do makes the hugest difference.
Yeah, I see much more of a gender balance
Mm.
now in our organization and or in our profession. Sorry, and what you had said earlier, Bob, about just AIHA in general and with DEI and so I think we're getting there.
Mhm.
You know, I continue to feel that you know, as women, we need to just see each other in a different light too.
Yes.
Because some people have been socialized to, you know, be competitive and all these things. And I think we need to knock down all those barriers, get rid of silos, and just be as collaborative as we can, right? Come back to kind of, you know, why are we here? We're here as worker advocates. We want to prevent disease and improve worker well-being, right?
Yeah, it's super
Mhm.
important. I mean, and I've seen that too in my 38 years, you know, in the industry. It's changed a lot. It was white male dominated completely 38 years ago. You know, it was an anomaly to see a woman or anyone of color
Yeah.
ever in this, and so it's at least nice to see the evolution of the profession in general. So
Mhm.
it's
Yeah.
great. Well, listen, Jennifer, Nancy, thanks so very much for staying here late because we went after hours after the expo. That's why you may hear vacuum cleaners and things like that in the background. But yeah, it's a real important topic, and obviously, women in OEHS. We can't emphasize this enough. So thanks again for taking time out of your show.
You're welcome and thank
absolutely.
you.
All right.
Yeah.
So that's going to conclude today. You know, and again, those of you watching the show, you'll be watching it in a few weeks or a month or you know, sometime later this season. This will actually air, but we will have one more day here at AIHA Connect 2024 in Columbus in the expo, doing more interviews and yeah, stay tuned with it. So until next time, I'm Bob Krell. Stay healthy.